What's the scariest experience you've ever had at a gas station or rest stop? Not safe for work, part 2. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I used to make 5-hour trips to and from the north of the UK from London every weekend. Each trip would almost certainly need a fuel stop, and on my Friday evening journeys north, I would usually stop to eat as well. Quite a few of the service stations would have identical facilities on each side of the motorway and a food court and a bridge between the stations on each side of the carriageway. One evening, I accidentally came down from the restaurant on the wrong side to discover that not only had my car been stolen, but my much-loved old dog had been stolen with the car. After about 30 seconds of pure panic, I managed to call the police, and the operator asked me to check that I was on the right side of the service area. I cried with relief when I realized the stupid mistake I had made. I was parked at a rest stop in the middle of Texas stretching my legs. There was a good amount of traffic right behind me on the highway and plenty of road noise. As I stepped towards the restrooms, I heard some horns honking, so I glanced over my shoulder while walking and felt a rush of wind and the roar of a truck engine go past me. Traffic was stopping on the highway, and an 18-wheeler lost its brakes and went hauling ass through the rest stop parking lot and nearly took me and 4 cars out, but managed to avoid everything except a dog poop station on his way through. If I wouldn't have slowed down to look over my shoulder, I would have been a smear on the asphalt. I don't remember if it was a gas station, but I know it was a little food store and it had a restaurant connected to it. I think I was about 8, and my father had told me to find something specifically while he got us food at the in-store little restaurant. So I was walking around the aisles trying to find something, and this totally random guy came out of nowhere, stood right next to me. We were touching shoulders, and I didn't like it, so I tried moving to another side, but then another guy went to the other side of me so I couldn't get out. Then the first guy put his hands on my waist and tried covering my mouth. I already knew what could happen and really didn't like it, so I just yelled, "Dad, I need help," and those 2 guys just walked away quickly. I work in retail petroleum construction and maintenance, so I have a lot, but this is the scariest one. We were scheduled to upgrade a site's fuel controller and POS system. This is a place we don't usually work, and it's in a sketchy part of town. The customer was BP, and they demanded we do the job overnight as to not disrupt their business. Me and my coworker got to the hotel in the morning and tried to get some sleep since we had to work all evening. We ended up getting a few drinks and oversleeping by about 30 minutes. We scrambled and showed up 45 minutes later than we planned and found the site already taped off by police. 30 minutes before, someone robbed the store and shot the cashier in the head. Had we not overslept, we would have been on site and probably behind the counter with the cashier at that point. BP hired security for us for the remaining night projects after this. My husband and I did some regional trucking and were headed to Dallas, Texas. We noticed a car was following extremely close. Their headlights kept disappearing and reappearing behind the trailer. This went on for at least 20 minutes, and our truck was governed, so this car was going at least 10 to 15 miles under the speed limit to stay behind us. We were about 25 to 30 miles from our usual rest stop that we slept at and didn't want to put ourselves in a weird situation if this person was going to try and rob us. This was the beginning of COVID, and a lot of news stories were talking about truckers getting robbed. My husband was driving and decided to pull off at a picnic rest area to see if they followed. They did. It was poorly lit, and we were trying to make out the details of the car, but they were behind the trailer. We stayed parked there for a while and saw someone get out of the car from the passenger side. My husband told me to go to the bed in the back for safety and to call the cops if I had to. This woman approaches the driver's side, and he rolled down the window a bit. Our dog was going crazy barking. I didn't see her, but could hear muffled conversation. I did hear her mention something about our dog and his bark is more intimidating than he is, so we tried to keep him hidden to keep the intimidation factor. My husband told me that she said she was running low on gas and looking for the closest gas station. We passed at least 4 during the time of them following us, all car accessible but not truck, and that's why we didn't stop sooner. Then she mentioned there was a Love's billboard and she thinks she's going to stop there. My husband pretty much said he thinks there is one up the road and he's taking a little break before driving all night. My memory is a little fuzzy, but I think my husband then pretty much told her, "Okay, well, I gotta go," and she went back to the car. We stayed there until the car drove off, which was probably 5 to 10 minutes, and got the car description. We did stop at that specific Love's out of morbid curiosity and a quick bathroom break. This truck stop was small and shady as hell. My husband double-checked the seal on the trailer to make sure they didn't try to get into the trailer while he was distracted talking to this woman, and it was fine. Didn't help that it was probably 11 p.m. We looked around for the car. It was a beige, silver, older Toyota Camry with paint missing off the hood with a Colorado license plate. Nothing. We did, however, see a bunch of police cars hanging out in front. It was scary as hell at the time. The non-emergency numbers need to be easier to find, especially when cell service is terrible. Not the most terrifying story, but it creeped me out when it happened a couple of years ago. I had just packed up the majority of my life into my car and was driving from Georgia to move back to New Hampshire where I grew up. I had stuff packed to my ceiling in my car, and so could only really see out of my front window and to the left. I was asleep at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere after many hours driving. A couple of hours into my restless sleep, in my seat that couldn't recline due to all the stuff in my car, I feel my car rocking a bit. I'm deep enough in sleep that I somehow convince myself that it's nothing for a little while, but the rocking persists. Earlier in the night, long story short, when it had been pouring rain, I'd wrecked the tire very badly because I couldn't stop due to road conditions after it had gone flat, and ended up having to put my spare donut on, which is the main reason I had decided to stop at a rest area, to wait for a local mechanic shop to open up so I could buy a new tire and continue my journey south. So, anyway, now my car is rocking, and I get a shot of adrenaline that jolts me awake as I realize that something isn't right, and my car shouldn't be rocking by itself. It's just barely morning light as I jump out to try to get a view of the other side of my car that I can't see from inside because of all my belongings blocking my view. And there stands someone who was parked next to me in a mostly empty lot while holding a tire iron. They sheepishly tell me some story I can't remember, and that they were just checking my donut and were wondering if I wanted to trade for theirs, because theirs doesn't fit their car well enough or something. Deep in that state of post-sleep stupor, where I can't string two thoughts together, I asked them if they were touching my car while I was inside. They say no, and although I wasn't clear-headed enough to be able to understand if their story is realistic or not, or whether or not I should help them, I was sharp enough to understand that they've just lied to me. And since I was very aware of how vulnerable and defenseless I was at that moment, I jumped back in my car as quickly as I could and decided to drive the rest of the short way to a local mechanic and wait the rest of the time until they opened in their parking lot. Was working at a chain gas station, think it rhymes with freeway, and this guy walks in and comes to the counter with 4 very large alcoholic beverages. I can see he's already lit, and I started to talk to him a bit. I was hoping he was living around the block or something, but he calmly stated he was on his way somewhere that was easily 3 hours away. I thought to myself, oh no you're not. I called the non-emergency police number and reported him as a drunk driver. They got him and he blew over 3 times the legal limit. I probably saved his life that night. I showed up to the court date and he took a plea deal. They threw the book at him too. I was scared because I had never actively tried to do something like that before, but I felt obligated to phone it in. I'm not sorry I did it either. My high school was right across from a gas station, which was always packed before and definitely after school. The gas station had this strategy to keep the 50-plus kids from all being in the store at once and driving away non-teen customers. What they would do is, if you had your school ID or any sort of bag or backpack, you had to wait in a line outside since you were obviously a student. Customers who weren't students, like little kids and adults, were able to walk in freely. And however many people left the store, they would let X amount of students in. I was waiting in line with all the other students since I wanted to grab some snacks and drinks for my friends, and I was about ready to go in since I saw people checking out and knew I would be given the green light to enter. From outside, I heard yelling coming from inside and then a couple of screams. Next thing you know, I see some high schooler keep his face down and kinda crouch as he quickly runs out past me. I noticed a bloody knife on him. As you can guess, he freaking stabbed someone, and I'm sure the person lived but didn't get my snacks, and glad I did not witness that incident in person if I arrived a bit earlier. It was some guy from my school, and I should probably mention that I went to a ghetto school and this type of stuff happened. I was never involved in crowds like that, so it was my first time actually seeing people do that. When I was around 20, I lived in a college town and would frequent a hookah bar within walking distance of a gas station. One night, I was out with my girlfriend and we were chatting with some guys. I'd guess they were 25-ish. I was already dating my now husband, so I kept it friendly while my friends were trying to make connections. One of the guys took an interest in me and saw my relationship as a small challenge instead of a full stop. I tried to be gentle with his ego, but this backfired. I ended up leaving with one of my friends. Everyone else stayed. One of the girls gave this guy my phone number, and over the next 2 weeks, he sent me numerous threatening texts and pictures of dogs, but not cute pictures. The night we met, I told him I volunteered at a rescue and loved dogs. He said he also loved dogs, but neglected to tell me he used them as fighting dogs. So the pictures he sent me were gruesome, and I was deeply disturbed. I never responded. One night, one of my friends and I were walking into the gas station, and a man held the door for us. I politely thanked him and went on with my purchase, then headed out the door where he was still standing. He started following us and yelling at me. I realized who he was. No bystanders offered to help, even as he tried grabbing me and called his friends to come with him. My friend and I picked up the pace and ran into the hookah bar, where we met up with a big group of our male and female friends. This guy came in and started screaming at me that I was a stuck-up see you next Tuesday and whatever else he could think of. So my friend Michi, who was about 6'4" and 250, crazy man, was around 5'8" and thin. His friends were smaller too. Stood up in between me and this guy, his friends, and told him to get the fuck out. The other dudes lost interest and headed out of the lounge, but crazy man pulled out a gun. Michi stayed so calm, I'm still amazed. He just kept saying, "You need to leave. You're not going to hurt these girls." By now, everyone was paying attention to us, and the crazy man must have gotten spooked because he gave up and stormed out. It's been 11 years since that happened. I've never heard from Crazy Man again. I feel incredibly lucky that Michi was there and not afraid to help me. 4 friends and I were driving from Ontario, Canada to Florida for New Year's. We drove 21 hours straight to get there. In rural West Virginia, our SUV ran out of gas and we luckily coasted into a super sketchy gas station in the middle of nowhere at 2:30 a.m. Not a soul in sight. The man behind the counter told us to put $5 in the car and get the hell out of here. The gas station was notorious for late-night robberies. As we were just about finished filling up, 3 men with guns emerged from the darkness and began walking directly towards our vehicle. I wasn't waiting around to see what they wanted, jumped in the SUV and took off. 15 to 20 minutes down the road was a small town with a well-lit station. We decided to stop there and finish filling the tank. Security guard job. My partner drove me across the street to gas station for fuel and Gatorades. It was a hot summer day in stiff uniforms. I came out with my mind heavily somewhere else, jumped in the passenger seat, and immediately heard, "You're in the wrong car." A lady in the driver's seat was staring saucers at me. I think I actually stared at her for a good 3 seconds as my broken brain tried to reconcile that I had gotten into a similar model and color car than my partner's a row over. Then I broke out into a nervous laugh and said something like, "Oh yeah, I am." And then I think as I got out, I said something about this being a test and always locking your doors in case of strangers. Woof. I may as well have been having a stroke. She is staring saucers, tracking me like a homing missile all the way. I get into the correct car, and my partner is just watching the whole thing in shock, like, "Did you know that woman?" I thought about that for a while afterwards. In Tennessee, no one would bat an eye for shooting someone who got into your car, justifiable self-defense. In another time string, my life ended with my last few moments of brain activity, wondering why my white male partner transformed into a black lady and decided to shoot me. This was actually the first time I'd been to a gas station by myself, and it was in broad daylight, but it wasn't busy out, so barely anyone was out, and the gas station was empty. I was pumping my gas, and I felt eyes on me. No big deal. I'll just get in my car while the gas is pumping. So I get into my car, and I look over to where the guy was, and he's gone. I then hear knocking on my passenger side window, and I look over, and it's that guy. I'm confused and a little scared. I didn't know what to do, so I raised my voice to ask him what's up. He was saying stuff, but I couldn't hear him too good, and then he started walking away. I shrug it off, but I'm still keeping my guard up. I then hear the click, signaling that the tank was full, and so I got out and went to put it back. And then I was going to throw out some trash I had in the back seat, and I opened the door and all of a sudden I'm pushed into the back seat. It was a hard push too. I hurt my nose, and I turn around to see the same guy. I can hear him clearly now. "Come on, baby. Why don't you let me make you feel good?" And he forces my legs open and is rubbing the inside of my thighs as I'm pleading with him to stop and get away from me and leave me alone. I try kicking and punching, but he pins me down, smiles, and then leaves. It was so creepy, and as soon as he left, I got into the driver's seat, locked all the doors, and got the fuck out of there. I've never told anyone this except my best friend. My wife and I were on a road trip in Iceland on our way back to the airport to head home. We stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere that had this strange building attached to it. The best way to describe it would be sort of a run-down chain restaurant that modeled after a house in Sacramento. My wife had to go to the bathroom, but the whole place just seemed so out of place and was giving off these terrible vibes of just doom and abandonment and dread. Like the air was heavier here, and there was an overwhelming tension and sadness, and this feeling like something was about to happen, so I decided to go in with her. We entered the building through these tinted glass double doors, and there's a sign with just bathroom, pointing into the building and off to the right. So we start heading in that direction, and it's just these series of empty dining rooms with dusty tables, all laid out in sequence like a maze. Just room after room, all wood-paneled and dusty and dark, winding and doubling back and turning this way and that with bathroom sign leading us deeper. Eventually, the path we followed opened to a small courtyard garden enclosed by concrete walls. The plants were all dead and there were holes dug into the exposed earth. At this point, we were getting pretty nervous, but we re-entered the building through another door to find the bathroom in a small bar that looked like it would be in your weird uncle's basement decked out in 70s decor. I guarded the door while she peed. Then we realized that there was a man behind the bar. He was gaunt and dusty-looking, gray with deep-set eyes. He didn't say anything, just stared at us. He was surrounded by tables of Pink Floyd t-shirts from some concert there in 1985. We fucking noped out of there. I'm convinced to this day that the buddy system saved our lives. Never split up, people. I used to really enjoy traveling at night because traffic wasn't as bad. It was just me and my old friend the road. One fateful night while traveling I-95 somewhere south of the border in South Carolina, I had a terrible case of the bubble guts, revenge from stopping at Taco Bell for some late-night menu goodness. After frantically searching and finding no gas stations open, I come upon a rest stop. By this time, the bubble guts have evolved into full-blown prairie dogging with whatever abomination had percolated in my bowels. I screeched my car into the empty parking lot of the rest area, and it ran as fast as my stiff-legged butt clenching would let me. The rest stop was empty and totally sketchy and creepy, but in my state, I had negative fucks to give and burst into the first stall like a man being reunited with a long-lost love. I sit down on the toilet just in time and enjoyed a grade A squat while being serenaded by a lovely duet of crickets and the hum of fluorescent lighting. My BM ecstasy was rudely interrupted by the slow, jarring squeal of the bathroom door hinges. I know what you're thinking. Empty rest stop, middle of the night, and I'm alone in this bathroom and some creepster just walked in. It's a damn good thing I'm already sitting on the toilet because I was shitting kittens. So this person walks in and, like a scene from a horror movie, slowly makes his way with heavy footfalls toward my stall. He opens the stall next to mine and goes in, drops trouser, and all is quiet until he starts singing at the top of his lungs, "Can you feel the love tonight?" My nerves were beyond frayed, and I wasted no time hauling ass out of there, mud butt and all, back to my car to make a hasty getaway. The price of new underwear and a good car interior detail pale in comparison to being raped and murdered in a South Carolina rest stop at 3 in the morning.